This slideshow is to accompany the readings for Chapter 3. Our goals are to be able to describe cells, their importance, where they occur, the structures within cells, and the function of those structures. And so I'm starting off with a picture of a mammoth under a primitive microscope or early microscope, and a caveman is looking down and says it's a mammoth. And it's a joke, but it's kind of points out that, in science, it's always fair to ask, how do you know? And for today's material and this week's chapter, the answer is really we look through the microscope. And once they invented microscopes, which is just over 300 years ago, they realized that there were these small parts of the human body that you couldn't see with the naked eye, but were clearly kind of separate and individual little compartments, and they called them cells. And so here, observing cells, the limits that people can see is just slightly less than 1 millimeter. There's 1,000 millimeters in a meter, okay, and a meter is about 3 feet. We can see things that are just slightly less than a millimeter, but the largest cells in the human body are around 10 micrometers. Micrometers, it takes 1,000,000 micrometers to equal 1 meter. And so cells are about 100 times too small for us to see. And so once they invented microscopes, they realized everything was made of cells. Our hair, our skin, our muscles, our digestive tract. Everywhere you look, you'd find these little structures. And as microscopes got better and better, we could see smaller cells, and then we could see things like viruses and parts of cells and even molecules. The microscope also allowed us to identify that we've got all these great diversity of life, but they're really all made of cells, and these cells are all kind of working together to make the visible life we can see, and that life processes are really the processes that occur within cells. Okay, and that if you look at things that are smaller than a cell, those things really aren't alive. They're just chemicals. But cells are alive. They can do things that living organisms can do. They take in food, they produce waste, they are sensitive, they respond to the environment, they move, they grow, and they reproduce. Cells are capable of passing on to a daughter cell all their information. And we have identified two basic types of cell. The smallest cells are cells of bacteria and organisms like that. They're very simple, just a little one chamber structure with no internal structures. And then our cells and cells of plants and other animals are larger. They're more complex with lots of internal structures, including a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. So we're made up of mostly eukaryotic cells. However, there are prokaryotic cells found in our skin and in our intestinal tract. In fact, since these cells are smaller, they tend to be extremely numerous, and there are trillions of them. Not 1 trillion, 10 trillion. It's a startling fact, but we carry more prokaryotic cells than eukaryotic cells. Okay, but those cells are just kind of hitchhikers. Our body itself is really made out of eukaryotic cells. These are the more complex cells that have lots of internal structures. Okay, one thing they all possess and one thing that directs their activity is that these cells all have a nucleus where they store their genetic information. And the other structures are compartments that are organized by internal membranes to perform specific functions. Okay, when we look at this diagram of a cell here, cells really, they're clear when you look at them, but this is colorized to make us see these things. Our cells are chock full of little structures, each doing a specific job, each going about its business, directed by the nucleus to do lots and lots of different things. We're going to talk about 4 or 5 organelles in this one. Even though there's many more, we'll talk about 4 or 5 that we find in all cells. One of the most important things that you find in cells is the plasma or cell membrane. This is the boundary that separates the cell from its external environment. It's a fatty layer of phospholipids that prevents the movement of most substances across it so that the cell can be different on the inside than its external fluid. The phospholipid bilayer has some proteins that are embedded in it. These proteins serve functions like transport channels, signaling molecules, attachment points, and other functions that are going to help the cell. The membrane is more than just a barrier. It acts as a sensory organ, a transport organ, um, and attachments for kind of like a skeletal system. So it's really important. And these proteins float in the lipid membrane and perform lots of these jobs. So all cells have this plasma membrane. All cells also have a nucleus inside. A nucleus also is a separate compartment separated by phospholipid bilayers. Those bilayers have pores in it, and those pores control what goes in and out of the nucleus. And inside the nucleus is most of the cell's genetic information, their DNA organized into large molecules called chromosomes. Okay, there are lots of proteins associated with these chromosomes, but this is where the instructions for our genetic code are housed. In addition, the nucleus also contains regions where you have lots of RNA, and this RNA is used to synthesize ribosomes, and these ribosomes and other RNA molecules are involved in the production of proteins. Okay, so let's talk about ribosomes. Okay, all cells also have ribosomes. Ribosomes, although they're made in the nucleus, at the nucleolus, they are transported out of the nucleus of the cells through those nuclear pores and then are active in the cytoplasm. And the ribosomes are a key part of making new proteins. They work with other types of RNA, messenger RNA and transfer RNA, and they convert the sequence of bases on that nucleic acid code into a sequence of amino acids that are then going to be a protein. So this is a key system of cells that allows them to express their genes and produce the traits that make the cell their cell. Okay, then one other organelle that all cells have is the mitochondria. And cells have many mitochondria. These are structures, again, that are found in all eukaryotic cells that are separated by membranes from the general cell cytoplasm. And then inside them, there will be lots of enzymes that carry out aerobic metabolism, where carbohydrates like glucose or fructose can be metabolized with oxygen, and that releases energy that the cell can then use to move or build new molecules. A unique thing about these mitochondria is they have their own DNA, and their own DNA is useful and can be allow these mitochondria to reproduce on their own inside the nucleus. They can't get out, or inside the cell. They can't get outside the cell. Okay, the last organelle I want to talk about isn't found in all cells, but it's important in many cells, and it occurs in most cells. This is the endomembrane system. It's a series of membranes inside the cell that surround the nucleus often, and it's actually several organelles that work together to do a variety of jobs. These membranes divide the cell into compartments where different cellular functions occur. Examples of the endomembrane system include the rough endoplasmic reticulum, here shown in blue. This is where new proteins are often made. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum, shown in green, where new lipid molecules are made. It also includes the Golgi apparatus, where molecules are packaged for secretion outside of the cell. And where we make vesicles and things like lysosomes, these are all made here. Not every cell has this, but most cells do. And for some cells, this is a very, very prominent organelle. Okay, so if you could try and memorize those organelles: plasma membrane, nucleus, ribosomes, mitochondria, and endoplasmic reticulum, that would be good. There's other organelles, but those are the ones that are common to almost all cells and are prominent in the human body. All right, we'll stop there. And next time we'll move on to starting more complex things, things that are made of more than one type of cell. These are the tissues.